So I just wanted to sort of kick it off with some intros of your backgrounds and then jump into some questions. So Dave, why don't you take it away? Just like your role at Indiegogo, how you became CEO, because it's a pretty amazing story. What your background's been, just jump on in there.
Sure. Hi everybody, thanks a lot for having me. I'm sorry that my voice is not where it usually is. I probably got something. I was at work today and we had a big announcement actually, and so we had a celebration, and as I kicked off the celebration I said, I'm sorry that my voice isn't all the way there for the celebration. And I said, so I took the microphone and I said, okay, first of all, I just want to let everybody know I'm sort of losing my voice. And a few of our developers started clapping. Like, oh good. He'll give up the microphone quickly. So I'll do the best I can. So I've been at Indiegogo for a little bit over 3 years, and as hopefully a lot of you know, Indiegogo is one of the largest crowdfunding platforms for perk-based crowdfunding. I'll talk in a minute about what we announced today, but like I said, I joined about 3 years ago. I originally joined as the SVP of operations and just became CEO just this past January. Before I was at Indiegogo, as Mark mentioned, I was at, I won't go through everything, but I was at Yahoo for almost 7 years, where I was the VP and general manager of our media and entertainment business. The team that built sites like Yahoo News and Yahoo Sports and Yahoo Finance, and a lot of the properties that people use to get information in the early days of the internet. Before that, I was actually an attorney, a securities attorney, which was actually very useful background for the thing that we launched today, which I'll keep you in suspense about for a minute. All right.
Excellent. Well, my name's Erik Norwood. I'm the CEO and the founder of Curb. So I'm originally from the Bay Area, spent about 10 years in Los Angeles. Originally have an engineering degree, and I worked for Boeing for a little while. When I was at Boeing, I was building space satellites. So GPS, DirecTV, and a bunch of stuff the NSA has flying around in space. I decided to get an MBA and moved out to Austin, Texas. Got an MBA from the University of Texas. And then I joined a solar company. It was about 6 people. Grew that to being about 60 people, and we sold that into a merger. It was kind of through a variety of those experiences, started having a realization around how we lack knowledge around what's really kind of going on inside of our homes, right? You think about how sophisticated our cars are with reminders to wear your seatbelt, to drive more efficiently, and even a check engine light, right? You don't need to be a mechanic to know light comes on, you take your car in and get it fixed. So I launched Curb with the goal of making your home more intelligent, and it being the check engine light for all of the different devices inside your house. So being able to tell you before your fridge breaks, or how much your air conditioner is costing you if you've left an iron on. So that's what we do. We have an individual product. We actually launched it on Indiegogo very successfully. We sold a lot of our product there. We started shipping our product in January of this year, and Indiegogo was a big catalyst for us being able to raise our follow-on funding. So happy to share kind of our experiences and how we've leveraged the platform for our success.
So just to start in, like you guys made a huge announcement this morning, pretty much like fundamentally game-changing for Indiegogo. Can you tell us what it is and how it sort of came about?
Yeah, so quickly before I get to what we announced today, when Indiegogo, like I mentioned, I've only been at Indiegogo for a little over 3 years, but Indiegogo was founded about 9 years ago. And the 3 founders, originally, the mission that they had is that the way they described it is they wanted to democratize access to capital. They wanted to make it easier for people that needed money to be able to get money. Originally, their plan was to do it from investors, and they set about to create this marketplace that would connect investors that were interested in investing in early stage companies or early stage project creators like filmmakers with the filmmakers or with the technology entrepreneurs. What they didn't know when they started is that that was actually illegal at the time, or more specifically that it was illegal to actually market, have that kind of marketplace and enable non-accredited, meaning non-wealthy investors into that marketplace. As a lot of people probably know, in 2012, I believe it was, President Obama, and I'm going to just keep saying that for as long as I can. President Obama, too soon. President Obama signed the Jobs Act, which actually enabled what's referred to as equity crowdfunding to become legal. And then the SEC and the financial regulatory agencies worked on the actual rules, and equity crowdfunding, the ability to connect investors with companies through an online marketplace for non-accredited investors, so letting anybody invest, just became legal in May. And just today, we officially launched equity crowdfunding on Indiegogo with 4 companies that are offering offering equity as opposed to perks in exchange for an investment in their company. So what happened is, we were joking about it today, but essentially our company created perks-based financing basically to sort of keep us in the game until equity was legal. Equity is legal now. We launched equity crowdfunding today on Indiegogo. We had a really nice launch today. Our 4 entrepreneurs that are on the platform are really excited about it, and we've had a nice uptake from investors in actually investing in companies on Indiegogo for the first time starting today.
So actually, Eric, we were chatting about earlier
Yeah.
that you were actually considering using Indiegogo for this type of crowdfunding, and there was some debate over it. So it'd be interesting sort of to share as like entrepreneurs are thinking about leveraging Indiegogo for this. What were the considerations or things going through your mind about should we or shouldn't we jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, just for like clarification, because there's a little bit of confusion that we've had with our investors and other people who've bought our products and how you've used Indiegogo in the past, right? So previously, what we did is we sold curbs essentially on Indiegogo. We pre-sold them before they were available. People would say, hey, I'll spend $300 to $400 on a product, and then we shipped it later. And now what's available is I could sell shares of my company, right? So you've already bought the product, you're fired up about it. I love the product, I love the team. We've been really responsive to all of our customers. Now, if you actually want a part of our company, be a shareholder, now you're able to do that. So it's something that we've, Indiegogo has been an effective catalyst for us raising about $3 million. And we're starting to look at doing our Series A, which will be close to a $5 million round. And a big chunk of that, you can raise up to $1 million, I believe.
For equity crowdfunding?
Yeah.
Yeah, technically you can actually raise up to $1 million from non-accredited investors, meaning non-wealthy investors, and then you can still raise more from accredited or wealthy investors.
Yeah, so one of the things I didn't really know before starting a company was that 80% to 90% of my job was going to be full-time fundraising, right? So I'm on the road raising money. And so potentially having a partner who can help us raise $1 million from a big pool of people. In fact, people who've already purchased curbs, who have curbs installed in their house, our happy customers, right, have a chance now to be part of our fundraising. So it's something that we've started looking at. We've actually you launched the relationship with MicroVentures.
Yes, we did it in we formed a partnership with a company called MicroVentures, also based in Austin, Texas, like Curb, that had been doing accredited investor financing for the last, I believe, 4 years, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, so we've worked with MicroVentures. They've raised money for us through accredited investors, and so now we're looking at potentially expanding it to non-accredited. There's a couple of questions that we've kind of kicked around in our team, and maybe we make it worthwhile to kind of have a debate about that. One of the things is we could potentially have thousands of shareholders on our cap table. As a CEO and managing a company, you have a variety of responsibilities back to those shareholders. And there could open issues around doing communication to all of those people, and what if you need signatures? So there's a variety of complications that were things that made us a little skeptical about, is this the right strategy? On the flip side, the big benefit that I see is, I've got a consumer product, right? And I want every opportunity to reach more people And if I have people who already like the product, right, we're already converted them as customers, why not have them as shareholders, right, and supporting us? So, there's a huge opportunity for, one, us to raise $1 million, two, get more publicity for our product, and three is engage deeper with our customers. So those are kind of the pros and cons that we've been weighing on our mind.
Cool. What do you think? What do you think about those? Like when the entrepreneur is weighing those, like, and there's so many options. There's AngelList, there's Kickstarter. So there's like so many things to sort of think about when you're diving into crowdfunding. Like, how would you sort of coach an entrepreneur through thinking about like how you use all the different vehicles and then VC and the different potential funds that can come in?
Yeah.
Where Indiegogo plays in.
Our hope is that through the services that we offer, that we make it easier for entrepreneurs to raise money. I think what Eric just described is a challenge, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs, that you set out to create this amazing product and then you spend a significant amount of your time raising money, and it's taking you away from building that product or that service that you're trying to build. I think those are very fair considerations, and I think it's really up to the entrepreneur to figure out what's the quickest solution. It depends on what's most important to you. Speed, valuation, like Eric mentioned, I think that's a really good point, that if you use equity crowdfunding, you might have more investors in your cap table that you need to manage. Our goal is to offer a range of options to make it easy to let entrepreneurs have the sort of quickest path to financing so that they can get back to focusing on building their products or services.
Yeah, makes sense. Also, Indiegogo, I mean, everybody's saying here, what's the secret sauce of a successful campaign? I think that's a good question. And also, it's been like it's sort of evolved from like crowdfunding to like marketing. Is Indiegogo more a marketing platform? Like a successful campaign on Indiegogo is that you got crowdfunded, now you have pre-launched a product, now you've launched your product. Like, is it really that whole life cycle?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one of the things that's changed about Indiegogo over the last 2 or 3 years is when I joined Indiegogo 3 years ago, the only thing that you could do on Indiegogo was run a crowdfunding campaign. You would get on Indiegogo, you would raise money for 2 months, and after those 2 months were over, that was the end. And you would collect the funds that you had raised, and you would go on your merry way. And what happened is that a lot of the entrepreneurs on Indiegogo told us that just because 2 months are up, basically, we still have a lot of interest in our product. The campaign that we ran on Indiegogo actually created a lot of consumer demand, and we'd like to keep meeting that consumer demand on your platform. So 2 years ago, we launched a product called In Demand that enables, which Eric is actually using for Curb, which enables entrepreneurs to continue to take orders after their crowdfunding campaign is over, and carry the entrepreneur all the way from, the way we describe it is enabling you to go all the way from concept to market. So you can raise your initial financing, you can take orders after your initial financing, and we have a platform that'll enable you to continue selling product all the way through to the point where you actually have a shipping product. And Mark, I think you touched on a really good point. What's exciting about a platform like Indiegogo is that it's not just raising money. While you're running your campaign, you're raising interest in your product. You're demonstrating demand for your product. Before Indiegogo or platforms like Indiegogo, you were coming up with the idea of your product, and you were raising money for that product, and you were building that product, and then you were negotiating with distributors to get that product out to retail, and then you were getting that product in the store. And at the very end of that whole process, you were then finding out if there was actual market demand for your product. What's wonderful about Indiegogo is that you start marketing that product very early in its life cycle, before you're actually ready to ship that product. And you can demonstrate demand for that product early. And what that allows you to do, and I believe that was the case with Eric, you can confirm this, what that allows you to do is to actually demonstrate to investors, like traditional venture capital investors or distributors or retailers or others, that there's actually a demand for this product before you actually have a shippable product. And it changes that dynamic dramatically. So, so you're absolutely right, Mark. It's much more than just financing. It's also marketing, it's demonstrating demand, and it's really a way to help carry you all the way to market with your products.
Cool. So is there a secret sauce? Everybody's 9, 10, man. It's like
I'll
crowdfunded.
Yeah, I'll tell you guys a secret.
Crowdsourced questions.
No, I'm just kidding. Well, actually, I think that, I mean, that's a really hard question, right? It's like, there's not you're trying to boil it down, and I think that's a wrong question to ask. It's like, is there a perfect product, or is there a perfect marketing campaign, right? What's the secret to launching a product? And that's a broad question, right? And the answer is, kind of marketing 101, which is who are your customers, right? What's the right messaging? How do you reach out to them, right? How can you build interest in your product ahead of time before you're doing it? How can you communicate your message and the value proposition in a short and effective way that people are willing to open up their wallets and give you money, right? So, the Indiegogo team is very effective, and they have specialists in each of the different categories, whether you're doing an app or a board game or a film or a hardware product, and they can coach you through some of the tactical things on how to be effective, whether how to effectively use an email campaign or what days to launch. But I think the macro strategy and what's really effective about it is you get a chance to test your strategy and iterate on it very, very quickly. And Indiegogo, the platform gives you real-time tools to track and figure out what things are really resonating with your customers. So I'll give you kind of an example. So we launched this, and we kind of have 3 different value propositions for customers, right? One is saving money on your energy bills, right? Another one is safety, right? Because we can tell if you left an iron or a stove or a curling iron on inside the house. And the third one is convenience. And the convenience around knowing before a major appliance fails, right? And so we tested all 3 of those different marketing messages, and we found that those different marketing messages resonated with different people in different ways, right? So it helped us really kind of tune in our marketing, and we were able to do that very, very quickly. I mean, literally days where you could see the feedback from targeted advertising on Facebook and the dollars showing up on Indiegogo. It was just a very effective tool to kind of resonate or to confirm our assumptions or find out that we were totally wrong, right? I mean, that's what it's all about is learning. So I don't know if that really answers the secret sauce. I think there's certainly help that Indiegogo can provide, but the other is just it's hard work and it's traditional marketing, and knowing your customers.
Yeah, I totally agree. Also, so software versus hardware, everybody always asks that question. I know we've talked about it. We're starting to get a lot more hardware companies in here as well. Yeah. But I mean, can software companies take advantage, or what is the ratio of software to hardware on Indiegogo usually?
Yeah, well, Indiegogo has campaigns across a wide range of things: hardware, software, games, films, things, nonprofit fundraising. There's a lot of fundraising that happens on Indiegogo. When it comes to the technology category, the vast majority actually is hardware, and it's in large part because for 2 reasons. One is the costs of actually tooling up an actual hardware product are in a lot of cases greater than software, so there's a greater need to, in the beginning of the campaign, both raise money so that you can take on the costs of manufacturing the product, and of course verifying demand before verifying that there's a good product market fit before you actually invest additional funds in creating the product. So on ours, it varies by month, but it skews very heavily towards hardware. That was another nice thing about hardware is a lot of people that are on Indiegogo up until now, before equity, were, I think, Eric, you described it in a good way. They're essentially pre-buying, I think you said, or pre-ordering that product. And it's very nice for the entrepreneur to be able to, get those funds ahead of time for the creation of that product. And that hardware sort of lends itself more naturally to that. People are happy to pay in exchange for an actual physical product that they'll actually that they'll get. As we move into equity, we expect the ratio to shift a little bit more towards software, just because the dynamics are a little bit different when you're investing rather than purchasing.
Yeah, it makes sense. So I'm just going by these questions instead of what's on the paper, because this is pretty interesting. So I think we talked a little bit about this, but the pros, what are the cons of raising from the equity crowd, as they say? What would you say, Eric?
Why don't you take that one first? I'm curious to hear what you think. I have a perspective, but I'm curious to hear kind of what you think.
Yeah, I'm not really aware of any cons.
We're all doing it.
Yeah. I think Eric touched on one. You'll potentially have a much larger cap table than if you have a single investor. In certain situations, your investors, if they are sophisticated investors, can actually help you at different stages in the process and forming partnerships, or just making introductions or providing advice in certain situations. People that are investing in you through equity crowdfunding may be less likely to be able to do that. Also, from a transactional standpoint, when you're raising through equity, you're sort of raising over a period of through equity crowdfunding, you're raising over a period of time. Whereas if you can source, a really good angel investor or a really good venture capitalist early, you can potentially do one transaction relatively quickly and move and shift back to creating your product. I think one of the huge benefits on the other side is, Eric was talking to us earlier about how he just moved here from Austin, and one of the advantages is, of course, you have so much easier access to so many venture capitalists, and and doing business development with the people that do technology-related partnerships here. For a lot of people that are not based here, actually, that can be a lot harder. And so one of the real benefits of equity crowdfunding is that it enables you to connect with investors that you would otherwise, at least geographically, not have easy access to.
Yeah, no, I think that's spot on. I moved from Austin, Texas here. I moved my whole family out here. I'm the first employee from Curb here in the Bay Area to raise money. So that's how big of a deal it is. I moved the family here. I think talking about some of the cons and some of the pros, I think it's kind of interesting. I'll share some of the conversations that we've had internally in our company. We're risk takers at Curb, right? Entrepreneurs, we're risk takers. So this sounded like a risk that was worthwhile to take. But we have lawyers, right? And we pay them to to minimize risk, right? And they are risk adverse. And so they come up with all of the cons that are associated with doing something like equity crowdfunding. So one of the things, having a whole 1,000 people on your cap table, that's hard to manage. Now, they've come up with a really creative process where they have one signing authority who can actually sign for all of those different people. So they're put in a special pool and potentially can address that concern. One of the other pieces of feedback that our lawyers, brought to us, they said, it kind of looks like, from a perception perspective, that this is raising money at the only place you can get it, right? It's like it's a desperate kind of raise. Now, we've been talking with VCs for quite a while, and we bounced that off them, and they actually had the very opposite feedback. They said, you know what? We don't care. If you raise $1 million and you use that capital to sell more product, launch more features, and get more customers, we don't care where it came from. We're willing to work with you if the product market fit is there. So I think that's a con, but I think that's how we've kind of thought about it in our mind, and that's the feedback that we've had from VCs. I think the one con that's hard to address is that we just don't know. We don't know how the SEC might regulate this in the future. They've certainly said, here's how we intend to regulate this, but the SEC changes, right? And regulations come out later. And so there's a question mark associated with that. Those are kind of those are the cons that we've thought about internally. We've bounced off our lawyers, talked about with VCs, and it's something that we're really excited about potentially doing, but we're still kind of learning about it. As I said, it launched today. So that's, I don't know, I hope that addresses some of the kind of pros and cons that people are thinking about.
Right. Would 8 hours of learning be enough for you? Eric, I thought you, before we were up here, I thought you told an interesting story on that topic of raising money through, and whether it's equity crowdfunding or traditional crowdfunding, this idea of the perception that you're sort of raising it through the only means that you can. I thought you described an interesting story of what it was like trying to raise venture capital financing before you ran a crowdfunding campaign versus after you ran a crowdfunding campaign.
Yeah, happy to share that story. So it wasn't necessarily raising a VC fund, but it was our first money that we were raising, right? It was our seed round. We were trying to raise close to $1 million. Had a prototype product, had some prototype software, and we were halfway through this process of raising money through an angel group out of Austin, Texas. And they had interest in doing half our round. So $500,000 into your first round, that's, it's a big deal when you're, two guys with a prototype that you haven't sold any of it. And the feedback at our first meeting was from those investors was, hey, like the idea, but I'm not convinced that anyone will pay you for this product, right? And we came back about a month later, and we had just launched the Indiegogo campaign. We set our goal artificially low. We set our goal at like 25 grand or something. And in the first day, we sold $20,000 worth of curb systems. And so like literally we came back, we had a presentation to these guys on the second day of our Indiegogo campaign. We said, look, we've been live for, I don't know, however many hours it was, and we've sold $20,000 worth of product. And we were presenting to a crowd like this. And some guy in the back, pulled out his calculator and did $20,000 times 365 days in a year. And he's like, holy shit, you guys are on a $10 million run rate. Like this company, you're way undervalued, I'm in. And I'm like, well, little did you know, right? I mean, we had all those friends and family and partners. We did like a telethon like all day long. Call your friends, call your family, get them to buy a curb, don't say no. And the next day we didn't sell 20,000, we sold like, 5 or 10, and the numbers kind of went up and down. But it was that perception that like, hey, we're on a trajectory. We created momentum out of nothing, out of thin air. In 2 weeks, these guys went like, hey, these guys don't have any momentum. Now they've got a way too much momentum, and like the value of the company is undervalued. We've got to get in. And so all of a sudden it generated a ton of enthusiasm around our product. They ended up coming in and contributing $500,000 to that round. So, I mean, that by itself was totally worth the value, right? And that money plus the money we raised through Indiegogo was what we actually needed to be able to build the product. And I think that's one other thing that we learned was, if you think it's going to take you, I don't know, $100,000 to produce this product, and you sell $100,000 worth of these, you should go out and raise 2 to 10 times as much of that money through other funding to actually be able to go out and produce it. So think about Indiegogo really as a proof point, not necessarily all of the funding that you need ever for the company, right? So you got to build that kind of financial model in addition to just how much you can sell the product.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. We track this with our largest campaign owners, our largest entrepreneurs on Indiegogo, and what Eric just described is a very common situation. To date now, over $1 billion have been raised on Indiegogo since the company was founded, but even more than that has been raised by those same companies after their Indiegogo campaigns from either angel investors or venture capitalists or ultimately through acquisition, based in large part on the success of the Indiegogo campaign. So, what we're seeing is it's actually quite the opposite, that if your campaign is successful, investors won't look at it like, well, potential future investors won't look at it like, well, they raised money from the only source they could. They look at it like, wow, that campaign really validated that there's a market for this product, and now I'm ready to invest.
Yeah, product validation is huge on a platform like that. So actually, I just wanted, before we open up questions, I just want to let you guys know that we actually just today linked up a partnership with Indiegogo to help all the members of RocketSpace have a frictionless way to get their campaign up and running on Indiegogo. I've heard from several entrepreneurs that we need an easy way to get our campaign on there, optimized. So now that partnership is in place. Is there anything you'd like to say about that?
Yeah, we're very excited about it. Also, one of the things, what we try to do at Indiegogo is make it we have thousands of campaigns live on Indiegogo at any point in time, and we've been doing it for almost 10 years now. So we recognize that for a lot of companies, running a campaign will be something you do for a fairly short period of time and one time. So we've actually built we have a team in-house that we call our campaign strategist team that works with our large campaign owners to help guide you through the process and help you and give you this sort of advice that Eric just described. What's a good day to launch? How do you want to set up your perks to make them successful? If you're interested, provide advice on what you may or may not want in your pitch video to make it more successful. And we want to try to take the almost 10 years of experience across thousands of campaigns to make it easier for new entrepreneurs on our platform to be successful. And we're very excited to do it with the members of RocketSpace.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm thrilled. And I mean, at RocketSpace is all about a frictionless environment to help entrepreneurs sort of focus on getting their product out there. Everybody here is focused on creating amazing products, but a platform like Indiegogo can just get you out there so quickly. So I'm thrilled that we have that partnership done. So now let's open it up. If you have any questions, actually, I can read them off of here, but I think we've hit some of these actually. So if there's anything pressing that's not up here.
I think the second one's kind of interesting.
Okay.
And I don't know the answer to it, right? Is how, if we were to go on Indiegogo to how would we value Curb? I mean, is there a third-party valuation, or is it, do I come up with it? And
yeah, it's a great question. It's funny, one of the things that's evolving, sometimes I think the more things change, sort of the more they stay the same. Valuation is very complicated. There's a lot of different methods that you could use. You can get a third-party valuation to help you with that, like a lot of companies do in their pricing options, a 409A valuation. Or, of course, there is some legal work associated with getting your documents ready for an equity crowdfunding offering. It's fairly low cost, probably less than $10,000 in total, but those lawyers are now starting, the lawyers that are actually focused on this are starting to see a lot of deal flow and what's working and what's not working. They can provide advice based on what they've seen before, just like traditional venture, just like your counsel will often offer you in traditional venture capital. They'll give you a sense of what's sort of normal at this stage based on what they've seen in the past. Of course, every situation is unique, and there's no real rule of thumb for how you value your company.
You provide a space on the platform to communicate that information so that someone coming along wanting to invest can do some level of due diligence?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question, and I should have said that from the get-go. So to enable this to happen, the SEC actually implemented a set of rules for information that companies are actually required to disclose to make it easier for investors to evaluate. So as part of the co-branded service that we have with microventures, this part of it actually happens on microventures site because they built it out before we did. But basically, yes, you're providing financial statements, a summary of your business to date, all of the information that an investor would want to be able to do a high quality evaluation of that investment. Yeah, the $1 million limit for non-accredited, meaning non-wealthy investors, is actually a legal limit, and it's just an annual limit. What we expect will happen is that, and who knows, but it's very likely that what will happen is that investors will actually entrepreneurs will simultaneously raise money from non-accredited investors through equity crowdfunding, from accredited investors through equity crowdfunding, and do traditional perk-based crowdfunding. In a lot of cases simultaneously, because the work involved is basically the same work, so there's virtually no reason not to do all three. So you could raise $1 million from unaccredited investors, you could raise another $3 to $5 million from accredited investors, and you could raise another $3 to $5 million from by selling perks, by selling your product in advance to your customers, and with all three in combination, actually raise a lot more than $1 million.
The accredited investors is just wealthy individuals, it's not necessarily institutional investors.
Exactly, just wealthy individuals. Yeah, individuals that meet income or wealth requirements.
Also, so we touched on this as a top question. Can a SaaS startup take advantage of Indiegogo platform to raise funding? We touched on that a bit. Is there anything else you'd say about that? We touched around software, hardware.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a SaaS startup can definitely take advantage of Indiegogo's platform to raise funding. One of the early sort of themes or kind of principles of Indiegogo was to make it an open platform. This was really important to our founders. So anything that you can make available that's not illegal, you can offer on Indiegogo. And I think software as a service solutions are still okay, I think. Yeah?
Yeah.
Right, all right. So yes.
Illegal.
Yes, it's still legal. So yes, you can. I think they'll probably be more interesting for equity than traditional sort of perk-based crowdfunding, but absolutely a SaaS startup could take advantage of Indiegogo.
Cool. And how much campaign traffic comes from the platform versus the startups team's efforts?
Yeah, it's a great question. It varies widely based on the campaign. I'll add one thing on the earlier question about what's the secret to a successful campaign on Indiegogo. There's no single secret really, but one thing that definitely helps a campaign is to try to gain early momentum. And the best way to gain early momentum is to start by first collecting email addresses from people that are interested. Your friends, your family, your mom and dad, your grandparents, anybody that you know that might be interested in your campaign, because you want to be able to demonstrate early momentum as you're launching your campaign. So in the early phases of the campaign, it's often the case that the majority of the traffic will actually come from the entrepreneur, because in the very first phases of the campaign, you're building your audience by emailing your friends, and they're the first people that are hitting your campaign. As the campaign builds momentum, more and more of your audience will come from other sources. Last year, the largest campaign on Indiegogo was for the Flow Hive. Did anybody order a Flow Hive by any chance? Anybody know what that is? No? The Flow Hive, a father and son team in Australia developed a better beehive. More and more people are cultivating their own honey. Father and son team developed a better beehive. They put it on Indiegogo. They were operating out of, it was basically the two of them in they were in a very small home actually in Australia. They put it on Indiegogo. They wanted to raise $70,000. They felt like if they could raise $70,000, they would be able to manufacture this beehive. And they put it on Indiegogo, and within, over the course of their campaign, well, I'll say within the first 2 months, they raised over $12 million to make their beehives. They've now raised over $13 million. They have a full beehive manufacturing operation in Australia now. I can assure you, maybe a few of the first contributors were from their network. The rest of the $13+ million came from elsewhere.
That's insane.
Cultivating your own honey
amazing.
or raising $13 million.
For beehives.
Yeah.
That's
the whole
amazing.
story is amazing.
That is amazing. That is totally amazing. Yeah.
It's hipster,
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Darn, I gotta get
Hipster
on
brought
that.
into the family.
Yeah.
Actually, it's one other thing I'd like to touch on before we go through all these, is one thing I really admire about Dave, and I'm just getting to know Eric, but you're a total family guy with 3 kids, and that balance of being the CEO of a company like Indiegogo and seeing your kids at night and like prioritizing your family has been, yeah, exactly. Not gonna happen tonight. But usually, like, how do you deal with the balance, basically? Like, and for you as well, Eric, it's like you brought your whole family to San Francisco from Austin. How do you deal with, like, you know, entrepreneur, startup, tech, and then prioritizing family?
Eric, you want to take that, or you want me to answer first?
Either,
I'll tell you, and I'm a recent father as well. So I have an 11-month-old daughter, and my wife works a very demanding startup-ish kind of job as well. So, I mean, I don't know. It's hard. I put my family first, and then the company second, and then like everything else comes a lot farther down. But at the same time, I feel like running a company is all consuming, and you've got to find ways to be creative and have fun while you're doing it. Otherwise it's a terrible job. So you've got to be able to hire people that are really good and that you enjoy working with. You spend a lot of time with them, and then also people who are willing to respect a little bit of a balance. Maybe you do take calls after you put the kids down, but you have a little bit of time set aside to, spend it with the family. So, I'm certainly no expert and still trying to figure out the right balance on my own. But, I think it comes down to balance and having good people and trying to be totally transparent with your employees and the family about all the things that are going on.
I think that's great advice. I think you hit. I was thinking of two things in particular, and it's definitely a challenge. Do other people here have kids? Yeah, good. Good for you. I like kids. I have 3 kids, and like Mark said, I think there's 2 things. One is what Eric touched on. I think, and I always say this, the most important decisions I think that you make in the early stage of a company are around your team. The way I describe your team, sorry, my voice is going out. The way I always think about it is, if you have a great plan and a bad team, you will never be able to successfully execute on that plan. If you have a bad plan and a great team, they'll figure out that you have a bad plan and they'll change it. And so, just a super quick story that happened in the last 24 hours. So we were committed to launching equity crowdfunding this morning. We did one of those things where we actually were interviewed by the New York Times in advance so that the story could hit in the New York Times today on the same day that it was launching. And it turned out, we found out at, I think it was 7 or 8 o'clock last night, that some of the companies that were actually going to be doing their offerings hadn't gotten this number that you need from the SEC to successfully launch. It was just like a thing that they just weren't aware of and had sort of missed. And everybody was scrambling to make it happen, and they had to get on the phone with the SEC and get on the phone with the New York Times to push out the press, the publication of the story a couple hours. And there was a lot of people worked very hard to still enable our launch to happen this morning and to have it be synchronized. Because if we talked about it in advance of the SEC approval, that would have gotten us in trouble with the SEC. And if we announced it before the site was live, then nobody would have been able to go and see what was happening. It was a big deal. And I have to say, this was it's a testament to our team. I'm okay admitting it. I didn't know any of this was going on. And people had alarms that were going off at 2 in the morning and 5 in the morning and 6 in the morning to meet East Coast requirements and so forth. But we have a really good team, and they figured it out, and that allowed me to to get one night of sleep or to spend one night with my family, even with the announcement coming. So the first one is just a really good team. The second one, and I could talk on this topic for a while, but I'm often in the situation where I'm talking to new parents at Indiegogo, and one thing I always say is that it's if you want to create that balance in your life, you just cannot expect anybody else to help you create it. What I have found, and in talking to friends about this topic, what those friends have found is, if you decide what those boundaries are, and you draw those, and you make it very clear to others what those boundaries are, people will usually honor them. And at Indiegogo, it's like a lot of companies where people go home at the end of the day, have dinner with their families. They might get back on email or other things later in the day, but people leave the house or the office at the time that they need to be able to make it home with their families. And the trick is being willing to do it yourself and not hoping that your manager will do it for you or the CEO will do it for you. I tell people I'm not evaluating people at Indiegogo by when they're coming and going. I'm evaluating them to the extent that I am on what they're accomplishing and how they're contributing to the Indiegogo mission and how they're enabling entrepreneurs to be successful on our platform.
Awesome. Couldn't have said that better. All right. Well, I think that sort of wraps it up. Maybe Sophie, do you want to come up just for last things on the app and last questions? But it's about 7 o'clock.
Yeah, so we're just about done. We have just one last poll for you guys on your phones. But thank you, Mark and Dave and Eric. Thank you to all three of you.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you all.
Thanks for coming, guys.
Great question.